Welcome back to this episode of the Strong Kind Podcast. This episode was with Angus Bradley. Angus is a content creator. He's a coach. He is a thinker of interesting thoughts in the physical training and the rehab space. This is a great conversation. I love talking to Angus. He always puts a very good spin on things, keeps things relatively simple while also acknowledging how complex humans and training can be. It was a great chat. Find him at Angus Bradley 92 on Instagram or YouTube. He is a fun guy to listen and talk with. Thanks for being here. Peace. Yeah, I think that's one of the things, man, because I don't have a ton of clients in Australia, but it's awesome. It's super awesome. Like I would have never thought, okay, like I'm a physical therapist. I can help people in Australia, right? Or in New Zealand. But yeah, time differences and stuff like that, it doesn't make certain aspects of like collaborating with people super easy. So, but yeah, so how far ahead is New Zealand compared to like New Zealand is still like 5 hours away. I think that was the one thing I didn't really conceptualize is like
Me either.
you got to hop on a plane and go 5 hours to get to New Zealand, right?
So I think when they're depicting Oceania in cartography, or just when they're doing a map of Oceania, they just smush New Zealand in for
Yeah.
convenience and just sacrifice a little bit of accuracy. It's a 4.5 hour flight. And so this is the thing, the same swells that hit the east coast of Australia and produce these world-class right-hand point breaks, those same swells hit the west coast of the North Island of New Zealand and give us the same thing, but they're all left-handers, which is exactly what I'm after as a goofy footer. So yeah, New
So
Zealand, great place.
I want to go there. I want to do a Lord of the Rings tour of some form. I'm a Lord of the Rings nerd, but so where are you at? Are you near Melbourne or?
I'm Sydney, and so the north part of the North Island kind of lines up with Melbourne. So from Sydney to Melbourne, that's a 1 hour flight. It's about
Okay.
1,000 kilometers.
Okay.
So I guess it's like 4,000 Ks from
Yeah.
Sydney to Auckland vaguely.
Yeah. Dude, Australia's wild. Cause where are you from originally in Australia? Sydney?
An hour south of Sydney. So it's sort of, I can't compare it to anything in the US, actually. It's all
Yeah.
too big.
Dude,
It's about a 400,000 person, mainly university town. It was formerly like a steelworks coal mining town, but then it sort of transitioned with Australia's economy. But it's just an hour south of Sydney. So I'm not out in the middle of the sticks, but like my hometown is sort of known as where the mountains meet the sea. So we've got this beautiful escarpment. Wollongong is this beautiful narrow corridor just pushed up against the ocean. I actually bleep that out of the podcast.
dude, I don't edit this at all. Dude,
No, you're
it's so wild. Because I just did like the Africa or not the I did Australia superimposed on the United States, and they're like
yeah.
roughly about the same landmass. And then they're right next to it is Africa, and like literally the rest of the world fits inside of how big Africa is. Isn't that like freaking wild? Because you're just conceptually like, oh yeah, like Africa's just there, but it's like literally so big, right? So
It's
wild.
insane. And this is one of my favorite bits of pub ammo. And sorry if I've already yapped your ear off about this topic, because I've been passionate about this topic for about 6 weeks now, I would say. Nigeria, everyone kept saying, or I kept hearing a lot of people saying that Nigeria was going to have the largest population by 2050. And I hope I'm not misquoting any stats here, but I was like, what's their population now? Like, what's going to lead to them having the largest population out of any country in the world? Is it just like declining birth rates everywhere else, like China and all these other largely populated countries? The mean age in Nigeria is 16. There's
Really?
40 million people. So I was like, all right, like there are some babies coming.
That's wild. Yeah, that's a baby boom. That's wild, dude. Yeah. Uh all right, we're
So
off like
Australia's got an aging population, so that's just
dude,
saying.
so does
I
I
was
mean
shocked by that. Yeah,
we've briefly chatted about, we don't have to get too political, but like the United States, like we have our mean age is increasing, right? Like this is this is how superpowers die, is your population, and a lot of things happen, right? But no, all right, let's start some drama with Will
okay.
Rattel. Will Rattel loves percentages. Where is I just start with fake drama because I don't really think like a lot of the people that I follow, like you, Will, like
I was
Will's
thinking about this clip when I was in the gym just
dude,
and
him
thinking about
talking about, well, because
how much I love Will, but how much Will misappropriate. Like No, you finished the question. Sorry, I need
No,
to
no, no,
shut the
no.
fuck up.
I actually like the idea of percentages and RPE together because I like to correlate it, like knowing that like RPEs, let's say 3 reps at RP 8 is like 86%. Like that's beneficial in like, okay, if I am having a good day, what would 86% ish be, right? But then you still have to like, all right, was that 3 reps in reserve, right? And if I'm having a shitty day, then it's just like, all right, was that 3 reps in reserve? The thing about Will, because I did a podcast with Will, he's just a freak. Like, and I'm not saying this in like I just was like, how do I become this
No,
guy?
but it
And it's
must affect your understanding of the world. I think the same about Theo Maddox, a Kiwi guy who's 21 years old, and he deadlifted 470 kilos with straps.
yeah.
And I'm like, I don't know how many conversations I can have about training with this guy.
Dude, I was afraid of him, but he's actually super well. He's super down to earth and like, but
Will's lovely.
he just, I think his approach and like, I think you get this too. It's just like really simple and like he just likes to train. And he's also, dude, he's a collegiate. He was a collegiate linebacker. He potentially like he was on. He he played professional football. Like so, he is gifted from the stance of a lot of training time, but like he also just like keeps it really simple and like he also uses variability like he knows how to vary his lifts in a way that he's not accumulating fatigue from like beating his head against the wall, right? Which I think is smart. But anyway, what do you have to say to Will on percentage based training, and then we'll get a debate going when I can get you both on in the future.
And because this is the thing, I think me and Will like principally see pretty eye to eye on the key issue here. It's just in terms of how the methodology is abused and then like the examples that we use to sort of demonstrate that. Because I think one of his criticisms is that just people will take it easy. When you give people the opportunity to auto regulate, you know, you prescribe a 7 out of 10. So you expect to see some bar speed or velocity loss towards the end of the set, and they're just racking it before you see any sort of velocity loss. But if you prescribe that same cuck a percentage and you'd be like, okay, so I don't know what the fucking equivalent is of the percentages and stuff like that because I'm just such an RPE Kool-Aid drinker and sprayer. But yeah, it's like if people don't want to train hard, I mean, then it's just about like meeting them where they're at, making sure that they're bought into the program and stuff like that. This is the classic criticism of RPEs that it's used for people who don't want to train hard. And I would say what's more common, honestly, is for people to use auto regulation and RPE, people who are goal oriented to overshoot their programming and to try to do too
AKA
much. And,
this
and,
guy.
and like, I'm happy to have both ends of that sort of conversation. Or people be like, oh, well, I think a lot of when people talk about their issues personally with RPE, they're describing like to me a lack of self-awareness. And I never want to talk about this because like so many people that I really respect will sort of say this. They're like, you know, some days all my warm-ups feel like a 9 and then I'll still PR. I'm like, no, I think you're lying. Or like, I think that's a tremendous. I think
Fundamentally,
that's a
I think
tremendous lack of self-awareness. But
yeah.
then, am I a hypocrite for being like everyone should use RPE-based training? Because when I say that, what I'm saying is I don't want to train people who lack self-awareness. I'll refer them to a coach who will be like, lift exactly this.
Yeah.
And I think you can get great results. And a lot of the coaches who are good coaches that I respect, who are diehards for percentage based, they will say things to me like, I will provide them a percentage range. I'm like, hell yeah, we're practicing the principle here of the hero's journey, auto regulation. These are the things that are most meaningful to build into training. I don't give a fuck if you use, sorry. Yeah, you got the E, don't you? I don't care if you use percentages to give your client a prescription and some degree of autonomy. Like that's what I'm trying to do.
Yeah.
However you do that, RPE, RIR, which are the same thing, can we bury that conversation? The people who formulated this system fully intended RPE to be representative of reps in reserve. Yeah. And so this is the thing when you're like, oh, my warm-ups felt like a 9. I don't know about that. If you do some honest self-reflection, it's like, did you really have velocity loss?
Yeah. Yeah. That's so the one of the big, because I've had a podcast.
RPE is not, sorry, one thing just for
yeah.
RPE is not just your feelings.
Yeah.
It's adding your subjective experience into the mix,
yeah.
but you don't just throw velocity or technique, but you don't just ignore all of those things.
Yeah. RP without objective assessment of like, of honestly, and the objective probably just comes from that you develop experience over time. Like one of the big experiences, like, well, they're not going to know how to do it, right? And it's like, well, then we're going to practice, right? But like getting better at, like, I train, like a woman in her late 50s and her daughter who's 25, and like they don't know how hard stuff is. Like they'll do the barbell for 8 and I'm like, how hard was that? Like, I that was hard. I'm like, all right, let's do 55, and they'll do 55 for 8, and like, how hard was that? That was hard too. Okay, how many more do you think you could have done? Right? They only get better at that by doing it. But objectively, like, I can look at the barbell and be like, yeah, neither one of those was really slowing down. You just think that lifting is hard right now, right? And that's good. But like you, Will, and Austin Yoakum, like it all kind of comes come down to like people's egos in either coaching or in lifting are probably the biggest thing that needs to be managed across all of it. Like coaches, why are you doing what you're doing? Because you're trying to freaking make your ego.
Yeah, why do you use RPE? Like, what are you
Yeah,
trying to express through that? What
yeah, I'm
meaning are you trying to communicate?
exactly. Or why am I using like percentages? Or why am I using like exact? It's just like you want people to understand it this way, and then you're saying this is how I understand it, and like, because I'm on board with like Will, like I probably most resonated with, once I got out of that newbie gain stage. It's like percentages and estimating my percent like on a 4 week or 6 week interval. It's like, okay, this is what I hit, make a new estimate, and then base your training on that. Like it makes sense, but you do one of two things, just like you do with RPE. You sandbag it for a few weeks and then you hit a wall, like, and then, or you do train as hard as you should and you feel like, oh, this is actually hard, and like that's kind of good, because that's the other big thing that I think you and Will, and like we're starting, this is not beef, but I'm starting fake drama, but like where you guys agree, like if you sandbag 3 weeks of work just to actually get to the level of where you should be training at, like you just wasted 3 weeks. Like you might as well train as hard as you should, right? And actually that's how you actually progressively load, right? Like that's where I have gotten wrong, and like is like, hey, let's sandbag just so I feel like I'm making progress when I'm really not, right?
And this is the thing. I don't really care if you use percentage based or RPE. It's like, can you explain load management to me? And then I don't even need to know your thoughts on percentage based training or RPE, or like explain to me like what is the stimulus we're seeking with strength train, and just like, because these are the things that I want to hear people say things like, I'm looking for a certain proximity to failure. And then I'm like, oh, RPE percentage. Like, I know you're doing good stuff when
Yeah.
you say things like that. There's just a couple of little sound bites, and they can be expressed in so many different ways. But yeah, just looking for people to go back to those principles. The
What?
key issue I see here, and I feel like I sound like a bit of a broken record because I think I brought this up a lot. I mean, I beat this drum on every single podcast I go on. We are telling people we're in the evidence-based era, which is great, so much better than the bro science era, except where a lot of this evidence is leading, so much of this quantitative research just leads to dead ends.
Yeah.
And we are moving into an era of sports science, I would hope, with a higher respect for qualitative research, but it's new and it's complex. I think I chastise a lot of coaches for not being able to explain what they mean by coaching is an art and a science. Like, can you just, other than just being like, sometimes I just do a bit of bullshit. And I guess that's part of it, but it's like, what's your framework and your decision-making process for balancing or just considering the subjective? And I feel like a lot of these, and this is a meme criticism of, like, for example, the BPS model. People are like, oh, well, we're just boiling everything down to psychology. It's like, no, 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 no. This is not a via negativa strategy.
Yeah.
It's in addition to.
Yeah.
It's like, I know biomechanic, but the B still matters.
Yeah.
What about that P and the S?
Yeah.
Let's entertain some of that subjectivity, and then people will be like, oh, so subjectivity is all that matters. Like, no, 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 no.
Yeah.
I am looking at the data to sort of get my the constraints and the boundaries of good enough. That's
Yeah.
where I go to the data. But then how I use subjectivity is sort of like wherever in that bandwidth of good enough, just, collaborating with my client, looking at their personal circumstances, like that's how we actually optimize. So
Yeah.
all of these people are like, oh, RP is subjective. I'm like, that's not a bug of the system. That's a feature.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then like, so how are you attenuating the classical application of percentage-based training with that understanding that your subjective experience of things is relevant to the training process and outcomes?
Yeah. Yeah.
And a
I'd
lot of
always,
people just sort of sit there with their mouth open when you ask them to respond to that.
well, people like who say like it's an art and a science, and then they just go into the science, or
Yeah.
their art, right? Or their art is like, well, I'm just gonna like, because it is asking questions. Like a lot of it is, so I mean, when you're coaching somebody, like who is actually putting the thing into play is the person. So as a coach, like the science portion of it is like you said, and we can get into this a little bit. This was actually kind of what I wanted to talk about too. It's like, all right, like what's the stimulus, like what is the goal that we're oriented around, and then what are the stimuli that we have to impose upon the system. And I want to talk about stress, because you've mentioned this, and like if I do put out a mentorship, like which we've talked about too, I do want it to be very much stress oriented, because I think that's the fundamental thing that like we are navigating as humans, right? Both physical and so like psychological. It's just stress.
Of big rocks, it's the Everest of
It's,
what we
yeah.
do.
That's what's the fundamental thing for me, and that's why I probably talk about it way too much, because it's like, well, just fucking manage your stress. But like it's really hard, and I think about this a lot too. It's like everybody, like everywhere you go, YouTube, um, Instagram, it's like protocols. It's like this is your step by step thing, and that's not really how my brain works. I'm more of like an organic, like let's create this process. And yes, I get the utility of like steps,
You're
but
a
like,
why guy. Why are we
yeah,
doing this?
yeah, like that's a good way to put it, right? But like, but if, and it's like if I can try to, I won't say that like my thinking, like I understand pain well enough that I'm not scared of it, and therefore I can work around it really well, right? That's what I want people to figure out. That's what I want to ultimately help people do, so that they're not doing stupid stuff like going to a doctor for their foot pain that came on after they ran 14 miles, when they hadn't been running that far, right? It's like, I'm afraid that I jacked up my foot. It's like, no, you just stressed your foot out, right? And your body's also stressed and it's giving you signs, right? But like for you, when it comes to like, okay, let's talk about the art form. Let's talk about the science first. Like, what is the science of good training? And then like what is the art to implementing that science with a human being that is stupid like myself, that will go run miles really hard when they don't need to be, or like, you know do like, or squat when their groin is actively pissed off even though they should just like rest it for a little bit longer, right?
Yeah. I always just look outside of the fitness industry or sports science when I'm looking for my inspiration for these sorts of concepts, because I think that there's so many fields where our perception of them has transitioned over time as they've become more developed and more sophisticated, I guess, in the implementation and expression of those principles. And so one of my favorite examples of that would be music. We used a lot of mathematics to work out like the Western scales and things like that. And we're like, oh, okay, like we've found these really awesome constraints where people can kind of do whatever they want within these mathematical rules and produce consonant music. So we talk about like, do I have to, how do you even explain the difference between consonants and dissonance? I guess in 3 seconds, it's like things that sound nice together versus things that sound like dog shit. You can still have a crap song by only playing consonant notes because it's like maybe not that interesting. I guess
Yeah.
that's why you'd entertain some dissonance. Anyway, so like a bunch of mathematicians worked out that all these consonant notes were like a perfect fifth apart. So that's how we got like circle of fifth and things like that. But
Yeah.
there's so many awesome musicians who've been taught the circle of fifths and all these scales, and they know that it's like, okay, so these are the notes I've got to work with, and me as an artist, I'm going to mix these up in a whole variety of ways based on fucking whatever at the end
Yeah.
of the day, trying to achieve a certain outcome and please a certain demographic of people. And what we can say about music is, again, based on all the theory and the mathematics and the science, the quantitative stuff that underpins it, this is good enough. But then you can't write a song. I can't write a song based on all that music theory and be like, Dave, this is the best song you've ever heard. It's fully optimized based on the circle of fifths. You'd be like, I just don't like it.
Dude,
And you don't even have to go beyond that.
that's a
I can go
powerful.
further. It's chicken fucking soup.
Yeah, yeah,
Because you
true.
can put in the fresh ingredients,
Yeah,
but you serve it up to your mum. You're like, hey, mum, it's fucking optimal based on this food science. You know, it's all fresh
yeah,
food. It's all within date. I analyzed the way these different flavors will light up different parts of your palate. Your mum's just like,
yeah,
I actually don't like carrots in my chicken soup.
yeah,
I've never had that before. You're kind of bugging me out. I was expecting a really familiar meal.
yeah.
That's why I eat chicken soup. I'm not looking to get free. Sorry, I'm just ranting
No,
about sort of cooking, but like wherever you fucking look, there it is. Let's go to fucking economics where people be like, there's a lot of data. We have so much data. There's so many smart people trying to model these things. This is why I jerk it to Nassim Taleb because
yeah,
he hates, and this is, I'm not Nassim Taleb. He's much smarter than me, but I found this very relatable. They didn't have necessarily an evidence-based era in economics, but it's very much a data-driven field.
yeah,
And based on patterns and historical data, people get this ego and this overconfidence that they can predict the behavior of a complex dynamic system made up of systems. And I was like, fuck, that's just like people reading the dumb squats versus hip thrust studies and thinking that they could, or like chewing through a bit of two-door bumper and then be like, yeah, you're going to hit this squat PB at the end of your 12 weeks because we're going to do the 4 weeks of hypertrophy, the 8 weeks of strength work, and then fucking whatever left of
you,
peaking or.
you know what I find to be the most like, well, if they sandbag like the beginning of that block, right? But the most predictive thing is if they just really freaking believe. Like, oh yeah, like I'm doing this for this. And it kind of depends on like their training level, right? But like belief, belief that okay, I'm doing it, like
Oh,
that's
yeah.
like the biggest like predictor, right? And dude, I'm reading Fooled by Randomness right now, and oh man, like it he says stuff that like he critiques common sense and then he fits it with like basically risk assessment, and it's like damn, it's he's so right. But like the big example is like nobody actually like wants to insure things that they should insure, like generally speaking, right?
Yeah.
But like
Everyone's playing probabilities. It's poker.
yeah, like like and it's like if you're 50 years old and you have the opportunity to buy like really good life insurance that's like gonna come to term in like 20. I don't even know how life insurance works like that well. I just know that like but it pays your spouse like a giant premium if you die in like 15 years or whatever, and it's like seems like a good gamble. And you have cancer, right? And you have cancer, like that's the big thing. Like yeah, that's a smart play, but people don't like to look at their things like that, right? And dude, so yeah, and then the other thing, God, that is such a good analogy. The chicken soup one, because
Or can I go one more? Because like one
yeah,
hit me the other night where I was
yeah,
just up a little bit too late. Because like my journey with periodization theory has been like I was a real bomber USSR style periodization dick rider, and then I sort of went into like what I'd call a bottoms up shit show. There was almost like this overcorrection, and I've sort of come back to I call it just finding a balance between like you've got genuine top down constraints, but sometimes I'll create what I call artificial top down constraints just for the purpose of like, so you stop saying things like trust the process or we'll just sort of see what's there. Because like I said, like that can be the value of these top down constraints. Like, no, I want you to try and hit a fucking PB for me today. Like,
yeah,
let's just pretend that you're a predictable machine. But and what and I was kind of angry at myself because I'm like, how did I fall for that? Like just this big overcorrection from being like real top down with my programming model to then almost like exclusively bottoms up, other than being like, what's the specificity of your goal? And like,
yeah,
what's your competition schedule? I'm like, this is fully like so many fields go through this. And you look at music, so much tradition early on, so much dogma early on, because it's like we didn't really understand the true extent of this thing. Oh, then like we developed so many different instruments and went through so many different periods. But then the jazz age arrived, right? And people just got so lost in. Are you a musician?
I have a guitar that I play very poorly behind me.
Playing jazz is so hectic because at a certain point you just feel like you get so lost in the source, and then there's almost this appreciation for like, you got to learn the scales before you can play good jazz, because how do you know when you're playing out and what that's in relation to? You know what I mean? Otherwise, you just, and that's sort of what I look at. It's like you have to have respect for those rules and that we're not throwing out all these frameworks that emerge from traditional periodization theory, but we're just watering them down, be like, oh, we didn't need to be so rigid with the application of this. So
Yeah.
not just going full jazz, full bottoms up, but just find some space for just a little bit of jazz in that traditional periodization theory. Like that's almost what it is. It's just like we're just applying things more flexibly, if I had to sum it up.
So give me a
Possible.
few examples, like if you can.
Yeah, sure. Like um
I
we have to make the muscle bigger to increase its potential for strength.
okay. Yeah.
No. But it's generally
It's not bad.
there's kind of some truth in it, right?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
hypertrophy in growing the cross-sectional area of a muscle is absolutely a really great long-term pathway to strength gains.
Yeah.
But then sort of that whole truth, applying it more flexibly, I'd be like, well, I can't split the difference between, from a purely training perspective, like what's our stimulus for hypertrophy or strength from a pure muscular, like physiological perspective? It's proximity to failure.
Yeah.
Like we've got the coordination aspect and the skill aspect for like strength expression and stuff like that. But in terms of like the physiological stimulus, it's just sort of proximity to failure.
That's like one revelation that you and Will, it was one of Will's YouTube. I like Will's YouTube content. I don't know if you consume a whole lot of it, but he does like the 2 or 3 minute videos where he just like, hey, do this. Like, like I want to use his voice, but it's just like I also found him and I'm like, God, this guy's scary. But like, he's like, hey, do more hard sets. Like, and I'm like, okay, like I'm on it. But like, basically, it does make sense. Like, and I know that there's critique of the effective reps model per se, but like, effective reps make sense. Like when you're in that 1 to 5 rep range, like you're actually doing something, right? Like you can tell that, okay, I'm like getting close to this, like this is hard. And so like
Acute chronic work ratio, another one that's just a classic. What's the ratio? 1.5 or something. It's like, throw that in the bin. But
yeah,
yeah, it's like, what can we learn from all that research on acute chronic work ratio? It's like, oh, just don't like deliberately spike your athlete's load out of nowhere. But
yeah,
then the other side of that is you had so many S&C coaches who were just getting fucking drilled in a professional setting because their boss is like, you exceeded the acute chronic work ratio. You
yeah,
injured them. It's
yeah,
like, wow.
yeah. It's post
How
hoc
soft are we
analysis.
getting here?
Yeah, exactly, right.
Post hoc to
Yeah, like yeah, like God, that girl. Talk about a claim to fame. But like that's the hard part about because there are things that like you know you implement a training program in a group setting, and I have never done this, so I don't really critique people because group coaching like of teams is tricky, but like everybody's blowing up their hamstrings. It's like, well, we fucked something up, right? We didn't do something well in that a season of development, right? But like the other one that comes to
and
mind.
in a pro, sorry, just to cut you off, because you touched on saying good, because, and this is the key issue. When you're in a pro sports organization, James Smith, a thinker, he talks about this a lot. You have to bastardize your explanation of things
Yeah,
because you're trying to explain something to staff who are in charge of your job who don't actually fucking understand what you're trying to
yeah,
do.
and they
So
don't
when you're just
care.
like, oh, well, we've got to entertain a bit of subjectivity in these frameworks, they're like, show me fucking numbers going up because I don't
Yeah,
understand what you do, S&C wizard. So
yeah,
make squat numbers go up, make jump numbers go up. That puts the ball in the hoop more, or like
yeah.
whatever fucking
Yeah.
sport you're in.
No, it's
It's
true.
so
And it's
hard.
like it's like economics. It's like presidents claiming to have done something to the economy, right? It's like, did you?
It's
Like,
like, yeah, no,
yeah, like
yeah.
you
It's so
probably
BPS though, because the right leader can instill so much confidence
consumer
in an economy.
confidence.
Consumer confidence. It's like BPS economics.
Yeah, dude, it's wild. And that's why that's the utility. I think that's like one of my overarching like frustrating things is like you deal with people who have only ever been exposed to like health and fitness, and then you try to use models or analogies that are outside of them. But like, no, they're like, split squats are good. And I'm like, yeah, but you know, like single leg work is good, but so is double leg work. And you know,
Deadlift's good for your back. It's like everyone who deadlifts a lot has that I know has a bit of a temperamental back.
well, and
So
like
does everyone I don't know. Like, sorry, that was
no, and I think well, part of it's like the hard part about deadlifting, like is you can deadlift heavy on a regular base, like you can do it on a regular basis, but like there is some amount of like fatigue incurred by that if you do it every week, like it does start to like just make you stiff, right? You don't have, it's like, what are we trying to do here? And yeah,
Yeah.
I like, that's your own anecdote, like matters. And like I would honestly say like you can probably get a lot of the positive effects of deadlifting and at like the 60% range, right? Like 60 to 70%, where most people like they're consistently going into their 80% range or 90% range. And like it's, anyway, the other big piece of just periodization that people like to have names on stuff. Oh, this is my hypertrophy block. Okay, this is my potentiation block. This is me taking the strength gains from that first 6 weeks and putting them into a power development phase where it's
It's a
like,
story and it gets you horny and it
dude,
unlocks all
right?
those allostatic responses. And yeah,
Yes,
because that's it. I like those aspects of it. I'm like, oh yeah, we
exactly.
make it bigger and then we supercharge it. We activate the CNS in the second phase. I'm like, protocols on protocols. This feels really scientific.
Yeah. Yeah. And because it really is like, that's the story we're telling. Whereas like, all of it has been happening the whole time. Like most of what I am ascertaining from people like you who think about it in a way that is different, like Will, who like Will's just freaking training hard, and then every once in a while he just pops off and like, oh, I'm hitting PRs, right? Like even I think like Mike to share the same general type of thing. Like, hey, you've been training for a long time, you're gonna just have lulls of time where like nothing is really moving, and then it's just like organically you kind of level up. It's like quantum mechanics. I honestly think it's like there's a
No,
quantum.
it is because that's what I mean. Whether you're looking at fucking cooking, music, economics, physics was, and this is where it emerged from, in my opinion. It was the shift from classical physics into theorizing the quantum model. Because what I don't understand physics, but from my chimp, smooth-brained appreciation of it, I think what they were trying to do was embrace uncertainty, because
Yeah,
Einstein was always saying these things like, if I have enough information, I will be able to calculate everything with absolute certainty. Niels Bohr and co was like, we've just been getting so much more information and it feels like we're circling this truth, but we're not necessarily, maybe there's diminishing returns on all this extra information. And he was like, fuck it. What if we just acknowledge that maybe we're not that certain? And so, because I don't know how I sort of work this out from my own understanding. Again, people who know physics will be fucking cringing at this. You look at the depiction of the atom in the classical model of physics, and it's like you got the nucleus here.
yep,
You got, was it protons and neutrons make up the nucleus, and you're like, they're here, here, and here. And then
yep.
you've got these electrons with their paths depicted orbiting around the nucleus. So it's like they're here right now, and then here's where they're going to be at
Yeah.
a given point in time. The quantum depiction of the atom, to my understanding, is the nucleus is depicted as this mixed up clouds of proton. What did I say? Protons and neutrons.
I
Or
think it's
fucking
an
whatever.
electron. I think the protons and the
I thought the
neutrons.
electrons were going around the outside.
They are,
Anyway,
but
like they're all just sort of clouds, and they're like, it
yeah,
could be here, could be
yeah,
here, and they're
it's
trying to give you direction. It's actionable, but it's
yeah.
also like, oh look, this is a bit crazy.
I
We
mean,
don't know.
that's the Heisenberg uncertainty principle is like the atom could be here or it could be like there. Like,
Yes.
and like once you did think it was here, it'd be gone, right? Because it's a
And so
cloud.
taking that to coaching,
Yeah.
what that art and science is to me, to describe it explicitly, is giving your client or yourself enough certainty to take action.
Yeah.
But beyond that, and for motivation and buy-in, but beyond that, I'm not going to give them any more certainty than that, because that's leading them astray, because I am not fucking certain about much. And like when you probe people about this, they're like, no, no, no. But like, I know squats help you build bigger legs. I'm like, but how much bigger and by when? And all the time? And they're like, oh, yeah. And so that's like, when you say, I'm fairly certain that squats are a good quad exercise, I'm like, hell yeah. I'm 100% on board with that. But then anything beyond that, in terms of your level, it's your degree of certainties. And so this is the thing. It's not throwing it out. Like, oh, I don't know anything. Oh, what's the best workout for you to do? Oh, it's like, give them something actionable.
Yep.
Motivate them. Beyond that, fuck your certainty. And
Yeah.
people can't handle that.
People
Shout
don't
out
like
to
that.
shout out to the physicists who are willing to entertain it. Shout out to the economists who are willing to. People are like, oh no, the
So,
bicycle.
I
It's like,
mean, my biggest thing is like, you know who Alan Watts is, the philosopher, Alan Watts?
yeah.
Yeah, like he's like, I mean,
He gets
also,
quoted on Instagram a lot.
yeah, I mean, I like him. I went down a rabbit hole. I needed it. I needed that type of philosophy because it's like, the future would be super boring if you knew what was going to happen. Like, honestly,
Okay.
I could honestly say like if I knew that like it would feel really good to be like, yeah, you're gonna squat 600 like 6 weeks from now, and like, and here's the exact process. I would probably get, I don't know, maybe the 600 would just motivate me. That end goal would, I'd care so much, but like if it was certain, you wouldn't learn shit from it, right? Like that's kind of the game. Is like, hey, what am I capable of? What am I learning here? Like when I go into sessions, very curious but intentional, I have much better sessions when I haven't like tweaked something in the last like 2 months. That's just what my life feels like. I've just tweaked everything in the last 2 months, but that's okay. But like when I go into it, when I go into a session, like super outcome, like I gotta do this, like which isn't bad, but like I don't have as much fun. But when I just go in and like just do it and I'm curious about it, it typically goes like the meet that I did in April, like didn't really know how it was gonna go. I was just curious about what I could potentially do, and I had like a good day. As opposed to there were dudes around me who were like, I gotta snatch 100 kilos at this meet, or and I gotta clean and jerk 120, and they're like, and then they're, they bombed out or they missed their second and third attempts because they're just so tied to, I got to get to this thing. And I had that in my brain, don't get me wrong, but like, you know, so it's just a lot more, it's it's good and bad because we do want, people want to get jacked, like people want to feel good, right? And like, but it's just way more uncertain about like how that's going to occur. And the more you accept that and just lean into principles of, hey, this is what I can look at people who have been successful. Like, okay, what did Louis Simmons do that like Mike Teixeira is also doing? Like, there's more similarities than there are differences, generally speaking, right? Like what is Will Rattel doing that Squat You Guy is doing? Like when Squat You, when it looks good and when he's actually, making,
Because there is some overlap.
dude, 100%. Yeah.
Yeah, it's not completely divergent. Yeah, even like even with I'm really critical of systems like functional patterns.
Yeah.
Not there is some degree of overlap. I like to do some twirly shit too.
Dude, I mean, like moving, like Austin Yoakum just like plays a lot. Like that's functional patterns. Like playing sports
But
is
people will strawman him as well. Be like, oh, you just do entertainment. It's like, nah, no, no. They're getting some exposure to
they're
some
doing hard
consistent
shit. Yeah.
stimuli within there. Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. Like, I mean, if I had 10 people to play sports with like 3 times a week, dude, it would be so good, right? That's the problem with adulthood is just people get real jobs and you lose the people to play with and they get out of shape. That was another thing me and Will talked on. And it was funny because he's like 31 and he's still playing basketball. He's like, there's guys that are aging out and some of them still lift, but they don't sprint. And the sprinting and the running fast is the thing that's like breaking them down. And I'm like, that's probably been my biggest revelation. It's like I stopped sprinting for like 6 to 8 years, and it's kind of fucking hard to get back into. Like your tissues are not ready for that stimulus, and you want to be like, you want to run fast, right? Whereas like when you put a heavy barbell on your back, it's like in squat low, you're like, I can kind of tell I suck at this. But like when you take like 5 steps and then you feel something tweak, you're like, shit, that wasn't good, right? So anyway,
Right. I'll tell you now, everyone jerks at saying circle jerk that strength training's the fountain of youth. 80-year-old powerlifters look like 80-year-olds.
yeah,
Go to a master's track and field meet. You will see some shit. You will see it's such an uncanny thing. I've never seen anything like it. These really wrinkly people hurtling through the air, smiles all over their plate. Like I've never seen a 70-plus-year-old man run as hard as he could down a runway and hurl himself a couple of meters into a sand pit. You know, like it would make all these FMS trainers cringe. Like, no, how could we do that? And people worried about like a bit of a hip shift in a hinge or something. I'm like, fuck, man. Like, sorry, just going back to the point, and I am such an advocate for strength training. There's so many great health outcomes we get off the back of strength training. And it's so accessible. Going to a master's track and field meet may not be as accessible as a barbell, which is on pretty much every street corner, but I still just want to make that point. If you want to look young for your age, and people be like, you can't be whatever age you're
I,
telling me
I
because you're doing all that jumping and all that sprinting.
yeah,
How could you possibly?
running like
Maurice Green was running sub 10 in his fucking 40s. Didn't
yeah,
look it.
running fast. Because we talked about this a little bit the last time you're on. I'm on board. Like it's the thing that I'm
Everyone wants to be faster. People just don't believe in their ability to
to
bring
do
up
it.
that quality,
Yeah.
whereas they believe in their ability to get stronger.
And sucking it up and running like a 13-second 100-meter like doesn't seem like that big of a deal, but like honestly if you're 50 and you're running a 13-second, or even if you're 40 and running a 13-second 100-meter dash, like that's not bad. Like you could be doing a lot worse, right? Or let's get the
Just
12.
like how fast are your mates running? A bit quicker than that. That's how fast you need to be.
That's
You need to
100%,
be
right?
top dog.
Yeah.
Especially if you work in fitness, you can't be letting your civilian mates, I'm talking like I'm a fucking Navy SEAL here. You can't be letting your civilian mates outrun you, outlift you.
Yeah.
That
100%.
you should be losing sleep over that.
Yeah. So let's talk about stress, because there's something, dude, I don't know if it's fight or flight, but maybe that's what it is. Maybe when you sprint fast, you're literally like letting go of the fight or the flight demons, and that's good for stress chemicals. But like, I mean, you can pitch yourself. I was gonna have you do it at the end, but like, when's your next mentorship start? Are you full on that mentorship?
We actually started one 3 days ago, so
Oh,
there'll be
nice.
another intake
And not to do
in
something,
like 2 months.
but I
And
don't
we'll
know
talk
how.
about stress.
Yeah, I know, like when I took it, and I do, your mentorship was good. It helped me start to think about things that I need to be starting to think about on a lot of different ways. But like,
Yeah,
you
we get
talk about
around, didn't we?
what?
Like it bounces around.
Dude, I mean, that's kind of like, real stuff is eclectic. People like try to put stuff in boxes, and I'm like, no, like you have your own philosophy on this stuff, and like you weave in, you create a better story in alignment with like principles than a lot of the other stuff. Like, man, I'm taking a couple continuing education courses. They're not bad, but I need them for my license, and they're just like they're just bland. Like, yeah, okay,
And
like
it's the worldview and the philosophy a lot of
yeah,
the time that
100%. It's like this is what good training is. Like, okay, or like, but you talk about stress in that, like you talked about stress when I took it, but you are orienting it seems like a little bit more towards helping people understand stress, because I think you posted the internal and external load, right? And then I said like the load, I did the same meme, I stole it from you, but like it really is. This is the way I look at it. The load you are trying to handle, right, versus the load you can tolerate. And like people's that mismatch on a regular basis is what messes you up. You can do it every once in a while. Your body will accommodate. And you do have to apply more stress to have a benefit, but like people overdose themselves and they don't understand like, hey, your kids, you love your kids, but they're stressing you out in a way that like, your blood pressure is raising and like you're physiologically right. So let's talk a little bit about stress and why it's so important.
because when I question myself, I'm like, what am I fundamentally trying to do? When I'm writing a training program, if I had to express it as simply as possible, I'm attempting to dose stress in a controlled way to get a certain outcome. And if you're honest about the evidence, um, uh, I don't know if that's the right word for it, or the experiments that were done to sort of then hypothesize what the fuck stress is. You got to look into Hans Selye, because Hans Selye developed the most agreed upon shared understanding of stress throughout the earlier parts of the 20th century. But sort of midway toward, maybe more towards the tail end of the 20th century and into the 21st century, we've really developed and shifted our perception of like what stress truly is. And so the early model of stress was general adaptation syndrome. And my understanding of how we worked that out is Hans and co got a bunch of rats and stressed them out in a variety of ways, and then killed them, and then measured the period of time that it elapsed. And then I think they were weighing the rats' adrenal glands as a proxy to see how much it had recovered from that insult or stress, or whether it caused any adaptations or anything like that. And that trickled down into a lot of our like traditional periodization theory, and it all sort of emerged off the back of that. It's like, okay, so we can predict this stimulus response adaptation sort of thing. Whereas again, a little bit more of this broader understanding of stress. So it's like you've got internal load versus external. So external load is like, what's the weight on the fucking bar? How is gravity affecting you? But then the internal load is like, what's your perception of that? Because yeah, you can move 80 kilos most fucking days, but then some days it feels like a completely different experience. And again, our new sort of worldview of this biopsychosocial allostatic world experience, your subjective experience of things actually does influence how your body handles and responds to that stress.
Let me interject like really quick.
Whenever you want.
Do you think people mind F themselves out of performance by like, oh man, I'm bench pressing and like 100 kilos is heavy for me? Or, you know, like I do, dude, there's something too. I saw this post like last week. It's like good female powerlifters are like squatting and deadlifting like 400 pounds, like, you know, extreme amounts of weight, like pretty darn good at like 70 kilos, right? But, and I get that they have less upper body mass, but then they're like, their bench press will be like 135. It'll be like 65. And it's like, do you just, in my brain, the question is like, do they just think that like it's hard to lift with their upper body and they're not kind of supposed to? Though, like, you know, like I
There's
have one
no way to separate that from the genuine evidence. It's like,
Yeah.
well, Dave, where are they?
Yeah.
But no, because you're right. It's this. Well, then how do we get them? We kind of just need to put videos of Jen Thompson into all the females' Apple goggles or whatever. And
Dude, yeah,
force
just
feed
placebo them into like, okay, I can do this. Cause like that's
But
what
it's
I'm
my fault too. I contributed by like whenever I bring up Jen Thompson to my male or female clients, I'm like, oh, she's such an outlier. Like no female powerlifters are benching like this, and there's a few more now, but yeah.
There's so I mean, because I have a couple girls on my roster. Is like, it doesn't make sense how much, and I get, so this is the other thing, like women, but I don't even like to use like the heuristics about it, but like their deadlift and their squat have gone up. And then like they hit like a bench plateau and it takes so long. And I get that like it's gonna slow down. Like but like one of them, she literally like deadlifted like, or no, she bench pressed like 60 kilos for 8, paused, and then her max is like 70. It's like, this doesn't make sense. Like you can do this. And I think some of it is, and I know I do this, like, you know, that like for a while, like 225, 100 kilos was like scary to me, right? On the bench. And then like 140, like 315 was like I'm at 3 plates now. And you would get up there and you would, you know, like you wouldn't take it out aggressively because you're scared of it. And like, I know that there's lifters that do this 100%. Like,
and like, why did Jen Thompson think that she could do that? I mean, she obviously just applied herself and worked really hard, and she probably has some talent for it. But yeah, it is one of those things where like, but that's like you, I would expect it over time. I reckon that there will be a correction in that. It's just like a lot of just like legacy effects of certain things.
Yeah. I think that's a
booty building hit hard.
Dude, did you? Yeah, it did. There's a great book, like the guy who broke the 4-minute mile, like
Van Niekerk.
Who was it?
Wade Van Niekerk.
Oh, he was the first?
Oh, sorry, first. I thought you meant the current world record holder. Ben Johnson. Sorry.
No, who?
I was
4-minute mile.
Ben or Michael Johnson. Oh, 4-minute mile. Sorry.
Yeah, who did the first? Roger Bannister. You know Roger Bannister?
Yeah.
Like, okay, it was like 1954, right? Well, he did it, and then people just started breaking it. Like
1,000-pound squat in the IPF.
Yeah.
Ray Williams dunked one. No one was close. Oh, Jezza was close, actually. Jezza was breathing down his neck. But then like 5 super heavyweights within the next calendar year all dunked it.
Yeah. And it's like that type of perception, if you're close to it, that somebody can do it is huge. That's the power of like training partners. Like if your training partner is remotely like close to you, but maybe a little, and it's also like, this is like the best way to get good at tennis is to play somebody that's a little bit better than you. Right. So
I got my last girlfriend into lifting weights, and one of the first gyms I took her into was this CrossFit box in the middle of London, where like, so most of the lifters there, the people going to that gym were women, and I would say like it was just so normal to be doing like a lunchtime weightlifting session at Wit London, and for the weakest female to be snatching over 60 kilos. And I bring my 50-kilo girlfriend into this room, and it's immediately normalized. Women not much bigger than her just snatching that. And like her early, like she had talent going into it, but I was like, I've never seen someone pick these things. But then like, I'm like, who the fuck is getting like one of their first hardcore gym impressions? Just seeing all these women on their fucking lunch break just snatching blues. I know there's female weightlifters that snatch fucking close to three
Yeah,
blues
but
now, but
like
like,
that,
it's just,
it's not the norm. Yeah.
even as a dude just walking in and just be like, fucking hell. Like,
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and that's the thing about like I think the power of like Travis Mash, like he's like kind of a part of the Olympic like the US Olympic
mm,
strategy team. He's like he's just always trying to get people to have hit a PR. Like he's like I want people to leave the gym with like a PR in something, right? And it's because like that psychological feed forward of like okay, had a good training day. Like that, like I think one of the biggest problems that I've had in the past, and I've gotten a lot better. I care less about training. I still care, probably too much, but like I just enjoy it. And I do want to make progress, which isn't a bad thing. But like the emotional attachment to like your good days and your bad days is kind of silly, right? But like if you just stack a bunch of good, like this was a good day, this is a good day over and over
mhm.
again, that has like super awesome effects. Whereas like if every couple weeks you're getting frustrated and you're like, why am I not doing, where I want? Like that that will play that like when you go to warm up, you're like, this been kind of crappy the last couple weeks. Like, like it is that ability to detach and just like go do that is super powerful. And that's
Yeah.
internal load, right? That's a part of the internal load equation.
Yeah. That's what I mean. It's just like, can you account for those variables? Or are you
Yeah.
just completely zoomed in on just this one thing and this
Yeah.
like very narrow, traditional, primitive framework that just emerged to just give us some heuristics or to start sort of that process off?
All right, last couple questions. Where how is the how is the ATG crusade going? This is what I wanted to ask you about because being on social media, dude, I made a post yesterday and like I immediately like felt bad about it because I felt like I was bashing on like nursing home workers because I'm like I don't want to
What
be in
did
a
you
nurse.
say?
I just said like I don't ever want to be in a nursing home. Basically the post was at one
But
point in my
true that.
life I was afraid of the gym because it like exposed my weaknesses. But then as someone who has worked in the hospital and nursing homes, I like
You've
realized
seen
like
worse things now.
this is way being weak is way worse and I don't want to have my weakness capitalized on, right? But I kind of felt like am I being an asshole to like people who like which this is irrational because like how many nursing home workers are seeing my content? Probably not very many, right? And or healthcare workers, but like it does get to you like that is like kind of the tribalistic part of our brain that like doesn't want to get excommunicated, but like when you are putting out like an opinion and then you're like because also dude I think you probably do this like what if I'm wrong, like what if I am kind of being the dirt, like what if I'm kind of being the dick here, like that's the way I'm always like, and I think there are takes that I think are good or bad, but like to some extent a lot of these people who have giant followings, like they're just giving people what they want, right? But we're kind of being like the Nassim Talib, being like, the problem is that what you're getting is an inferior thing to actually just training hard, right? Or changing your mindset about what this injury means. Cause like, oh, like my big thing with like people like ATG and Squat U is like what you're basically trying to do is give people this mechanistic protocol that fixes them, but then eventually something worse is going to happen and they're going to feel like how do I fix my machine? Well, the old thing's not working. And like that's like not how it works, right? Like you're an organism. So when it comes to social media, do you ever like does it get to you? Does it affect your mental health or like do you just feel
Oh,
like
yeah. But it drives me forward because the truth of it is, um, if you're right, but you can't communicate that, you're not good at communication. And I think a lot of smart coaches would disagree with that, but they're just not good at communication because a lot of them don't respect this whole thing I keep going on about. Shout out to Marshall McLuhan, that the medium is the message.
Yeah.
They'll be like, no one wants to read my fucking dissertation of a caption on Instagram. I'm like, yeah, but you knew that. You knew that before you even wrote it. You knew it when you were posting it, because if I asked you, what do you usually see do well on Instagram? You'd be like, hot takes, things that you can consume in 30 seconds. And then when deliberate, you're not even participating in the fucking game, right? So like you have to work on your skills as a communicator, and by extension, like content creation, despite the fact that everyone wants to shit on it. You're just influencing. It's like, no. This is a very fucking powerful style of communication. If you're trying to have a positive or negative impact on people, it's this really fucking powerful tool.
Dude,
And you can
just like
choose.
this is
Sorry,
like something I learned like last couple weeks ago. It's like leaving, like it's called like pebbling, like penguins like leave pebbles for the people that, or the other penguins they care about, so that they can like follow them. Like that's literally what short form content is.
Yeah.
It's like I'm just trying to like I'm also like, I'm gonna be honest, like I'm trying to, I love what I do and I'm trying to provide for my family and like allow me to live the lifestyle that I can feel good about. Like, but I'm also just like trying to communicate via something that people are actually going to consume right now, because we've all bought courses that you don't actually consume, right? Like 12 hours of continuing education that you're like, shit, I gotta actually, and then what you do is you wait till it's like the week before and then you just spam it, right? But like,
Yeah.
if somebody sees my message over and over again about like anti-fragility, and then it piques their curiosity, I'm like, what the hell does he mean? Right. And then they go look up Nassim Taleb and they look on like how
Start
complex
pulling on that
systems.
thread.
Yeah, right. They complex systems gain from disorder. And they're like, oh, well, so what's Dave talking about like complex systems gaining from disorder? What does he mean like that? Well, like stress is beneficial to me. Okay. Like my ego is most satisfied when like I have people like tweak their back or they hurt their shoulder, and instead of them catastrophizing it, they're like, hey, what do we do to adjust for this? I'm like, hell yeah, that's what this is about. Like I can adjust, right? So anyway, I took you aside, but like, yeah, the medium's the message, and short form content can be really, it's really powerful because it segues into longer form content, which is working with me, right?
I love it because yeah, you get the model. You absolutely understand what I'm trying to do and my framework for getting into the nuance. Because this is the thing, people comment on my Instagram post about like, this lacks a bit of nuance. So be like, fuck me. It does. That's so crazy. I made a 10-second reel without nuance. Whoops.
I think that's one thing I have just learned to appreciate more is like, Jake Tura. You've interviewed Jake Tura. I don't know Jake Tura. I'm probably gonna try to get him on because he seems like an interesting cat. And I do. The scary thing about
Legend.
Jake Tura is now that I think he's like noceboing people about tendons because he's so in the weeds with tendons. Like I love one of my clients, but he's so in the weeds about his tendons. I'm like, God, you're listening to
The
Jake Tura again. And it's like fine because it's good to have protocols and stuff. But like at the end of the day, man, you're imposing more stress than you can handle. We just have to pull back and like just pull back, push forward, pull back, push forward. But like something Jake Tura said, like I can't remember who he was talking to, but like people are like, oh, this doesn't, what do you mean by this? This doesn't lack, like this lacks nuance. It's like by program. Like just writes by program, and then it's like, because that's where the nuance is. It's like, I wrote this 40-page ebook. Go read it if you want. This post
Yeah,
is
well, I put out 4 hours, sometimes more, of long form content a week. And it's been there the whole fucking time. Like I've been talking about it more since I gained 20,000 followers with a bunch of hot takes in a short period of time. So credit to them. They're like, all you do is make short form content. I'm like, actually been making long form content since before any of this shit. I started churning out podcasts on a weekly basis in 2017. So 7 fucking years on a weekly basis, I've been churning out long form content, and no one wanted to pay any attention to it. And I didn't whinge about it. I created a top funnel because I realized no one fucking owes me attention. So I'm going to try to entertain you for 3 seconds. before I can convince you to listen to me yap for a fucking hour. It's a process that we build out over time. I'm going to build trust with you that I'm not going to bore the shit out of you or lead you astray too much in just 3 to fucking 10-second doses. And hopefully at a certain point, I can shift you over to my podcast or YouTube channel where I can yap your ear off about the nature of balancing objectivity and subjectivity when it comes to dosing, stress, or fucking whatever. Sorry, this is just me with my chip on my
No,
shoulder.
no, no.
I get enough applause on Instagram. I don't need any more
No,
applause.
I think
And the
so.
critics are all driving the
The
algorithm as well.
the
So thank
the
you too.
real lesson there is you started doing something and you said nobody owes me attention for this because they're not interested. Maybe because it's just too early. To be honest, probably because it's
And
not
people will be
good.
like, I don't lift much. I don't
Yeah,
have an impressive physique.
yeah,
And I'm like, then don't listen. If
yeah.
it doesn't resonate, don't listen.
And and that's a good way to put it because I think like, you know, people will look at like Will and be like, what's his contribution, right? His contribution is that he's jacked, right? And like Will's smart. Will articulates stuff. This is kind of one I not to like jerk Will off here. But he articulates his points very, very well. It was very interesting to me when he hopped on when we started talking and he's like, I thought I was dumber than all these other people. And I didn't like my job because I wasn't making very much money. I'm like, dude, you thought you were dumb? Like, and some of it's just the models and the systems he's been exposed to are just different than what I've been exposed to. And they're not that different. So, like, making the connections is powerful. But he articulates his points very, very good. I would not want to, if I was on the opposite side of Will, I would not want to debate him. And I think this is a big point that people don't because he has gotten very, very good at like concisely stating what he thinks is true, right? And you talked about like his sense of justice, and I'm like, yeah, like, but when it comes to like, here's the thing about content. I mean, I've only been putting out Instagram content for like 3 years, and I say only because people are like, wow, this isn't working after like 2 months. It's the same with exercise. Like, you haven't
It's
gotten
like you
very,
think they're just giving away thriving e-com businesses. It's
yeah,
like you didn't think you would have. People have such a casual fucking attitude. Sorry, can I just go on a little bit of a rant?
yeah,
Because you touched on
100%.
something that's close to my fucking heart. People are so willing to try and eat shit at so many other pursuits
Yeah,
that can not even have, or it depends on your value system, that I would say really lack the upside potentially of content creation. But there's such shame around failing at content creation. It's like, why wouldn't it be common, especially in the early stages, to eat a lot of shit when you're
yeah.
doing something that is like, I say
It's,
it's
dude,
competitive, but it's actually not competitive when you fucking commit to it. Like, and people will realize this about fucking anything, whether it's lifting weights, swinging a golf club, or making. It's just, do you have the fucking balls to be like, I'm going to commit to this. I'm going to be bad at it. I'm going to be bad at it in front of people, but I'm going to persist with it because I just understand that it takes time to develop any skill set that is worthwhile and genuinely impactful. Whereas people are, posted, didn't go viral. I quit. This algorithm's broken. And it's just, you're the same as that guy who goes under a 200 kilo barbell his first day. Yeah, oh, just lifting weights is dumb.
yeah.
Fuck, doesn't actually work. Everyone's just on steroids. Like everyone's like that with their content creation.
This
And it
is
just shits me.
to just bring it like back, like content creation, dude. It is like it is anti-fragile as hell because like there is dude, I built my business on an iPhone 7. This is not an iPhone 7. This is an upgrade. But
I was gonna say, please upgrade your iPhone.
yeah. But like my first 2.5 years of posting were just iPhone 7 camera, like
No, true. No, you're right. You're more right. You're right. You're right. Because
like
this is what I talk about. People let the production get in the way. You were just
dude,
like,
yeah, that's
the
like I mean,
content needs to be made.
yeah, just make the content. And I kind of, dude, Nasem Taleb also talks about this, and we're just jerking him off now too. But like, he talks about he had editors like want to clean up his style. And he's like, I just said, nah, I don't care. And he's like, then I sold, 4 million copies. It's because my style is what people identify with it, right?
Mm.
And it's not to say that I don't want to clean up some like as I get better at making YouTube, like I do want to clean up like that a little bit. I want to get better at like long form stuff, but like you can I mean, I'm not even doing that good compared to some people that I know are it's even easier for them because they know the problem they're solving, and they know who they're solving it for, and they're really good at I mean, even my wife doesn't try at all, and my wife has a business that is doing well, and she doesn't even put out very much content. She just knows who she helps and how she helps them, and she doesn't really care about like with the stuff we're talking about, like philosophical stuff, and like she's like, I just like to help women, come back from having a baby or prepare to have a baby. And me and you, like, we kind of like we've taken this like up across about who's right or who's wrong. We don't.
No, it is that deep.
Yeah. but like, I mean, the risk, the only risk is like, oh, I only got 10 likes, but like it honestly is like if one of those people really resonated with your message and they might buy your service like over time because you've established trust with them, like, and they pay you money for a period of time that like my biggest benefit of being on my own is like my time is my own. I still have to put in 40 or 50 hours a week of work or whatever, but I can do it whenever I want, which is sick. Like, or I can prepare and go take a vacation and not have to ask for it. Right. But like, yes, there's growing pains with that. Yes, it takes a year or two, but in the grand scheme of my life, like, and I could freaking, it could all come tumbling down tomorrow, but it's probably not. But like, in the grand scheme of my life, 1 to 2 years of like just figuring shit out, and then also just starting the habit of getting better. Like, just get better. You were posting on YouTube. I didn't know you've been posting for 7 years. Like, that's pretty wild, right? But like, you've also iterated.
Oh, that's podcasting for 7 years.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, but like you've iterated on your messaging for 7 years. Like, if you have
And I've said some dumb shit.
yeah, and that's good. Like, if you've had any intention of getting better, you're going to get better, right? And then if you actually listen to people and you listen to other people who are doing it well, you're probably going to get better too. And like I just, my wife, I got a PS5 for my birthday. I'm a 36-year-old man, but like I do like to play some video games. You know what happens though? Like, if you really want to be successful, sacrifice the 2 hours of the 3 hours you'd be playing video games for. Just play 1 hour and then go do some shit that maybe will pay off in the long run, right? Like, that's the difference, right? So,
yeah.
But anyway, or go lift weights.
And it's the same. You get good athletes. They're a good esport. My mates, I have some mates who are just very good esports athletes. And again, they just understand computer games. It's this fundamental level. It's crazy.
Yeah, it's just, you gotta like, I always just go to this, like some of my, like I have a client that I love she's in her late 40s and she's a runner, and she's like, she started working with me because she just wanted to get stronger because she felt like that was kind of holding her running back. And then she gets stronger, starts to see that she can run a little bit faster. And then like, yeah, and now we're actually going to start running. Like, we're going to work on your speed. Like, you're going to run a mile fast, right? You're going to run like 800s fast and 400s. And then eventually, like, maybe I'll get her to 100s fast, right? But like, she's kind of not to the 100s yet, but we're on 400. So we've titrated down from like 40s. Yeah. Like, but we've titrated down from like, all I do is run 3 miles or 8 miles, right? To I'm actually becoming athletic. And then it's improving my distance running, which is sick. And she like likes running again, right? Because
send me this lady's address. I'm gonna gift her a sled for Christmas.
I'm probably gonna gift her a sled. I'm buying a sled. I was literally
get her the sled.
I was Googling a sled, but
change her life.
But like, the power of seeing a different perspective, and like me like, because like 4 years ago I was like well, I don't even want to say, probably like a barbell medicine zealot, right? Like, oh, this is the perfect way. And I'm not, those guys I think are doing good stuff, but like, then you get exposed to like you and Brandon Accardi, like same general stuff with a different flavor that I kind of like. This flavor, I like this idea of sprinting and stuff that I really resonate with. And like, that's the type of stuff like people they'll give up before they find their way, their path, right? And like, and that's what we're trying, like, that's what I'm learning to try to do. So anyway, I went on a rant there, but good shit.
Yeah, but it was good because it takes time. Like, sometimes you just need space for a stream of consciousness. Dude, I got value out of that.
And I appreciate that. Yeah,
that's podcasting.
Yeah, dude, that is why, like, and like, people are always like, what do you want to talk about? Like, I just want to have a conversation. Like, I just I don't want to know, like, you can give me your elevator pitch and stuff, and we can maybe have like a couple topics, but like, this isn't me being like, so where did you study, where did you study strength and conditioning at? Like, I don't give a shit. Do you have,
Yeah.
do you, are you interested? Right. So anyway, I digress, but I'll let you
Now,
go,
some people say lifting weights is their therapy. I say podcasting is my therapy. That's
dude.
my toxic trait.
Yeah. So you got to have it. Talking to people's powerful. However you
And
want.
also go to therapy. Fucking go tell your secrets to someone who can't tell anyone else.
Yeah,
It
that's
is
a good,
helpful.
that's probably the best way to look at it. Like, tell your deepest fears and your biggest secrets, and then, your toxic traits to somebody who's not gonna like out you to the rest of the world. What
Yeah, like if you haven't cried and felt good about it, which is such an awkward thing to bring up on this podcast, but like it
yeah,
is possible as a man. So
dude,
fucking
I cried
if you don't relate to that,
I cried 2 days ago. I cried. No, that's what it is. I was riding my bike home from the trails I was riding on Sunday, which was my birthday. And I was listening to a song and I was just having a really good time. Dude, I cried. I was like, this is great. And like,
hmm.
and me crying, because I couldn't cry for a little while. Like, I was dead inside, like literally. And then like
No,
my,
because that's it. We joke about like some guys like is so like talk about
yeah,
like tendons and shit being inhibited,
yeah,
just like fucking emotionally inhibited. Like
yeah,
they're like, I'm not an emotional person. You're like, anger's actually an emotion, you idiot.
yeah, 100%. Yeah.
Then just
And yeah, there's a great Seinfeld emotion where Jerry, or a Seinfeld episode where Jerry learns to let out his anger, and then all the other.
oh yeah.
It's a great episode, great episode. But no, I'll let you go. This is bomb. I still want to get you and Will on together. I kind of want to have a like. I don't think Austin Yoakum really respects me, but because I think, but we had a podcast and it was fun. But I would like to get like a round table of you three and just like rip on stuff.
Yeah,
So
yeah, yeah. I can expand my hours in my Calendly thing as well.
no, we'll figure it out. I'll propose it. It's like one of those things where like I shouldn't feel like none of you guys like know like this. I feel like you guys are above me, like and I'm like I'm a 36-year-old man. Like there's nothing for me, but like you all have bigger audiences, and for me to like be like I'm just trying to like mine your audiences, which may or may
Well,
not be
outside
true.
of the fact that you're my client, so like
Yeah,
I
true.
can't just be like, no, I'm not going on your podcast.
That's why I
So
pay
many
you.
people, so many, but like so many people at the start of my content creation journey, I was like, why the fuck is this person talking to me for free for an hour? They charge over $1,000 for a seminar ticket, and like I've never done shit for this person, and
Yeah,
um, so I get like that's me paying it for. But and what I've realized as well, it's like you're still doing something. Like I have a platform where I can come on and yap for an hour if I need to share my feelings. But like there are people with big audiences who actually don't have a frictionless way to
yeah,
yap about something for 20 minutes. So yeah, reach out to people with confidence because it's on them to say no. And honestly, it's more of the small time people. I know that we're getting into cliches here, I could not believe who came on our show in the first 50 episodes. Like getting no's from the cool coach down on the street fucking corner. Meanwhile, Jeff Nippard, Greg Knuckles, Ray Williams didn't fucking get back to me for 6 months. Squats a grand, and then the day later is like, sorry, man, I was just really focused on training. I'd love to come on the show whenever. It's like, sorry, yeah. Just reach out. Anyway, just
dude.
that was more for other people
No.
who are listening.
I reached out to Greg Lehman last week. I'm gonna get the movement optimist himself to talk. Dude, that guy I love him, but he confuses me about like what like he's so deep, so meta. But I'm excited for he's probably gonna be on. I think he said that he's got
Lives and dies by the evidence-based sword. Credit
dude.
to him.
Yeah,
Like,
dude.
because not many do, and
Yeah,
they claim to be like he's evidence. Like,
dude.
oh,
Dude, the internal debates. He's awake at night. Let's just put it that way. Because I shut down that part of the brain, hopefully. So all right, man. Appreciate you. Check Angus out. Angus Bradley 92 on
I
Instagram.
don't know why I put the year of my birth in my Instagram thing, but yeah.
You should take that out. Angus Bradley 92 on Instagram, part-time comedian, also found at General Physical Preparation, which is a fun train heroic program if you want access to Angus.
Get your free trial.
Free
No spots
trial.
open for coaching. No
I
plans.
do kind of love pitching stuff because I'm just like you like it's like when you don't take it seriously, it's way more fun. Just like,
That's a vibe. Yeah.
yeah, like, I mean, you can check out my program. I don't give a shit. Like, you know, once you get to that level, like, yeah, whatever. But yeah, and appreciate you, man. This was good. I'll try to. You're the first repeat guest. I'll probably try to have you on
Yes.
every
That's
20.
huge.
This is episode 25.
This is a
So
sport for me. So that's a huge W. Thank you
every
very much.
25-ish episodes, I'll try to have you on. But dude, honestly, people can crap on Joe Rogan. I like listening to Joe Rogan. I know that people are like, oh, but like when he's on like when he does like a either a writing podcast where he's talking to like a writer, or a comedian, it's top tier stuff. Like it's really good, like
It's when
philosophical.
he's in the moment because he
Yes.
has such a sense of curiosity, but then
Yes.
sometimes it just feels like he's clocking into work and he
Yeah.
accidentally slips into, have you tried DMT? So
Yeah.
he hasn't done that in a couple of years, but yeah, we all know the Roganisms and
Yeah.
stuff
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
that. Whereas like, just he has those moments, and I'm like, this is it. Like he's
Yeah.
just in.
Wait.
But what about this? Oh, but what about
When he
this? And
has
yeah,
chemistry and curiosity with the person he's on, and they're not just on because they're a name that like there are people that come on that like he's having them on to get a bump or like because mainstream will listen to that, right? But like when he's on with comedians that they're talking about the process of being a comedian, I'd like that shit is super interesting to me. So anyway, I digress. But appreciate you much, man. Enjoy the rest of your Thursday. Peace.